Hello. Hey guys.
What's up?
Hey.
How's everybody doing?
All right. Hey guys. Sorry we're starting off a couple minutes late. I was finishing my lunch.
That's Zach's fault.
Yes, it was my fault. Totally. These guys are ready and waiting for me. What's going on? We're going to be looking at some of the entries, as many as we can. There's a lot of them, but some of the entries from the Clean vs. Weather contest. Guys, for anyone who doesn't know you guys, the Aaron and Mike here were our guest judges for the weathered side. You guys go ahead and maybe just give a little introduction for yourself, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with
go ahead, Aaron.
Your work and everything. Mike, you want to go first?
I guess I'll go first then.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. I was going alphabetically. I was trying to be polite, you know. Yeah, Michael Rinaldi Studio Press, author of the SMO3 Sotheby book that was available the past couple of years. Professional model maker. This is what I do, and weathering is kind of what I spend most of my days doing. So excited to be here judging for this contest.
Aaron,
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks, Mike. Aaron Simons, just an extremely passionate and long-serving or long-sentenced modeler. I think I'm getting up on a 40-year sentence now of modeling, so quite a long time. Started in the traditional stuff, cars, armor, aircraft, kind of drifted across to mech and all the other bits and pieces, but always been fascinated with weathering, not just in models, but in real life. Always been kind of attracted to the beauty of it. So I try to translate that in my work. Not really building much at the moment because I've been 3D printing, trying to learn a new discipline. So been a bit slow online. Apologies to people that follow me, but it'll all come back.
It's a lot of work.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So long and short of it, two very qualified judges. So thank you guys both for your time. We've already gone ahead and done all the judging, but thank you for your time again today for everyone. So this is something that I wanted to do for the contest for a long time, is be able to give some feedback for everyone, not only just the winners. So it's going to be a little bit awkward.
Get your skins on, boys. Get your thick skins on now. It's coming.
Yes, exactly too. And for everyone that we're going to be taking a look at your entries today, just keep in mind it's just all constructive criticism for you guys to help you in future contests and stuff. So
that works well, Zach. That we can see these good.
Yeah. It's just going to be, as we switch from one entry to the next, you guys will have to bear with me a little bit. It'll be a little bit awkward, but we're just going to go through these alphabetically here, and also based off of that's your guys' email name, so it won't be like anyone's actual names. But anyway, this is AF. His name's in the images here as well too. But AF Company, you guys take it away. Let me know your thoughts on this one.
You want me to start?
Sure, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sure. We'll rotate through.
We've really rehearsed this. We're a well-oiled machine. Yeah. So look, I'll start off by just saying as a group, we spent a long time talking about this model, and it's kind of one of those models that catches your eyes. It was really interesting. We really liked a lot about it. But a bit of a creative take on things. I really liked it. But the thing that sort of stood out for me was that I could tell there was some thought put into the weathering in terms of it's not just the same, level of weathering over the whole model. You can kind of see a lot of effort being put into weathering the lower portions or the areas that are high wear areas, versus like the kind of face of it is not as weathered because you would expect it's somewhat protected from the environment. But no, I mean, all in all, great little model. The only thing that I think, maybe it was a time factor. The base were probably a little bit plain, but perhaps that was just a time factor, and had there been more time, you would have been able to put a nice little base, because I think that these small type of models really look good with a little vignette or a little base or something like that, can really kind of bring them to life. What about you, Mike? What do you think?
So for me, this one particularly, besides the colors, which do pop, which are strong, this one has a good variety of sheens between the metallic and the various metal surfaces of this model, between the matte finishes of the shoulders and the arms, and the blue is slightly he's got a different sheen to the orange, which is a little bit glossier than he, so this modeler has definitely made some attempts to kind of, plus the hoses and stuff, and starting to do, taking the machine into where it's this actually shows different varieties of metals, and that to me was interesting, beyond just the fact that it's the colors and stuff. I didn't put too much weight, having judged a lot of stuff in terms of completed pieces at regular shows. Online contest feels like this for me. I know you mentioned the base. I didn't put as much weight in when we get to the other stuff pieces in the contest here. I didn't really pull back points off of anybody that didn't quite get the bases all up to snuff. I agree with Darren. Of course, this one looked awesome with a little side story base to go with it. So, but overall for me, some of the lower feet areas were really nicely done. This modeler to me seems like he really kind of knew what he was doing. In terms of weathering techniques and stuff like that. And it's just kind of, I think he's at the point where the next couple pieces are going to really push him into the next realm of weathering a mech of this nature. So that was kind of what I thought on this one. It was in the running. Like, we actually had a good conversation on this one.
Sure.
It's close, but it needs a little bit of love, I would say. And that could have been a time constraint or just a technique constraint per se.
A bit of finesse, excuse me, a bit more finesse that I think a couple other ones that just edged it out had, I think, as an advantage over this one. And again, yes, I should clarify that the just according to kind of our loose criteria for the base was not necessarily a large part of the judging. It was just sort of a complementary thing. So, but yeah, Aaron was just pointing that out. I mean, as we're just talking about.
Just so people know, we didn't knock people off for the bases per se. Those that finished bases and did a little bit of stories with the stuff, it definitely enhanced it. But it wasn't a negative given the context of 3 months to do what we're asking you guys to do. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead. And so because there's so many, we're only going to be able to spend a few minutes on each one. So
yeah, it's true. It's going to be a little bit of a bummer.
I know. I wish we could spend a lot of time talking about each one. We want to make sure to try to get to as many as we can. So we'll pull up the next one here, who is from Alejandro. So get this. Here you are. Alejandro's Hemledge Senju. Mike, we'll switch it up.
Okay. I think when everybody sees this one the first time, this is a great conversation piece on when the first impression comes through. It's a very well represented model. The photos are excellent. The graphics, the clarity. That's a big plus oftentimes, because the first pass for a judge is important. We need to have a little bit of a bite, some sort of nugget, that really kind of captures us. And this one to me was because it pushes towards more of a professional look in terms of its presentation to us. That captured me right away. I would think the things that probably knocked it back down a little bit for us was just everything's chipped. Like every surface area has got some sort of form of scrapes and chips and bumps and bruises. And you start trying to put those pieces of the story together of why that happened. And to me, that was kind of where the debate on this one was kind of between all of that, because it's really nicely done. It's very well presented. The marks and scrapes and scratches are really nicely done, but they're kind of everywhere. And that tends to, the story arc of this piece for me was kind of where it probably comes in. Like, you could have put half of these chips on this model in particular, and it still would have had the same impression. I think that would have been a more successful end result and execution. So. But I really liked it. Again, the colors were nice harmony, the presentation, everything. It was one of those I really wanted to like a little bit more, actually, as a judge. Yep.
Very cool design as well too.
Absolutely. Yeah, the custom parts are all excellent, I thought, too. Changes and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and just generally the color choice and whatnot. But for me, I don't want to repeat anything Mike said, because we'll try and just get through it without repeating a lot. But yeah, I mean, there's certain things to do, especially when you're weathering dark colors. So a bit of feedback about dark colors, if you look on this model at the white areas, I think they're particularly well weathered. I think they look good, the white areas and even the orange. But the blues and the dark areas are always a bit of a challenge to get right, and very easy to go overboard with them. So yeah, a bit of restraint would help, but you can definitely see some really fundamental and good skills there by the modeler. So again, it just is learning how to tone back, and that catchphrase "less is more." That's that's a really true thing for weathering, and we're probably going to repeat that a lot today. But
Sure.
yeah,
there's some themes in the show overall with that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I mean, like, most people these days have seen, hundreds of modelers, and we all follow each other and everyone. So I think it's a widely known thing. But when you're in the moment, you're having a good time, and you really get carried away with that chipping, it's easy to do. So you've got to pull back sometimes. But no, I mean, great photos too. This really helps when you're judging an online comp to being able to actually see and get a good look at the model helps.
And Mike was mentioning that about the presentation of it helps, not just to make the model look good, but helps us for judging. I mean, the clearer we can see it, the clearer we can judge. And if we can see all the work that you put into it really well, then it's easy for us to appreciate that as judges. And the one thing I will say is that in the case with this model, and with a lot of them too, is something that I wish I would have clarified ahead of time, that you guys don't necessarily need to change up the pose, just kind of as a future reference. When we're doing these kind of competitions, guys, just leave your model in one pose and just take a bunch of photos of it, in that one pose, that we can get a really good look around it. Because I think you mentioned this, Mike, when we were talking about it before, that if you're doing the judging in a in-person competition, you've got to just sit there on the table in one single pose. So it's easier for us to judge it in that way.
Yeah, like Zach said, that's a great point for the future. And that was kind of one of the things. It wasn't a bad or good thing, but we could tell when the guys were moving the model around and all the photos were different poses, it was hard to get a general feel for that piece, what it was trying to be. And so that's a great point for future competition. Because when you do go to a show live in person, you have to slap it down on the table, and that's basically about it. So you got to run with it. Yeah.
It's actually a bit distracting. Like, when you look at the model again, you're expecting to see, okay, let me see the left-hand side of it, for instance. But if it's in a completely different pose, you've got to relook at it again and try and understand, well, what part am I looking at now? So yeah, it is a bit distracting.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so here we have Alan's. This is the GNX here. So Aaron.
Yeah, I'll kick off. I really like the way that this popped. Like, it really pops. It's got good color choice, good strong colors. And I'm going to guess here that this model hasn't been just buried in matte coat, because it actually, you can see the sheen of the panels. And that was something that we talked about as a group quite a lot. Like, there's this tried and tested formula of painting a model, dumping it in flat coat, and then, that's it. That's kind of an accepted way. But in reality, that's not how things are in the real world. And when you're trying to do something like weathering, which is emulating a real world effect, I think it's important to have that. And it just adds so much more realism to the work, right? And the light plays off it more naturally. But this is good. I mean, I think the weathering's just sort of even all over. And again, a machine of that size wouldn't kind of probably weather like that. It would be, more of a gradient of weathering. But I like the photos, really like the colors. It really pops. And I like that, the modeler worked with the actual paint and didn't just sort of work over just dull everything down with a matte coat and then go from there. Like, it's been nicely done. Good pose too.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, this would be a straightforward kind of a project for someone. I think where Aaron was going to, for me, when I saw this piece, is I think technically it all kind of checks those boxes a little bit. And then for the modeler listening out there, it's the same basic connotation of, what's really the story of this machine? Like, how did it get here? How did it get to this point? What's going on? Because every single corner and edge has some sort of wear and tear on it, which is, it's fine if it's been around for decades, or if it's some sort of form of that. So there are some photos of it on the base a little bit. So it is kind of starting to develop. And for me, I think this modeler is one of those where the technically is on the right path. And now it's taking what is weathering to this machine and what it means to this machine, and then kind of connecting those dots a little bit stronger with a little bit more emphasis of what's happening. And because it's just a really nicely done piece, but it doesn't stand out, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah. A couple of things that I'll note about this as well too is that you can see some mold lines around on some of the kit as well too. On some of the pieces, you can see a little bits of mold lines. So just where a little bit of work ahead of the painting would have been good. Also, I want to note this, and this is another something that's for a lot of entries, you guys will see that just not only the clarity of the photo, but also the cropping of the photo as well too. Like just for sharing photos online or whatever, having a photo cropped like this, for example, is fine. But for us, for judging this particular photo, it's hard for us to really do much with this because it's so like small within the photo, you know. So just sticking to, you know, closer up photos, things like this is great for us for being able to see every detail of the kit, you know, where it's a little bit closer up.
Yeah, that's actually something really useful to sort of let people know
Like
about
this as well too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but also with the photography, right? Like in the mold lines and the seam lines and stuff you mentioned, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
When you prep a model that's just seen by other people, they have to really handle it and get hold of it and really go under the microscope with it to sort of find those few seam lines and mold lines or little things like that, imperfections that haven't been fixed. But when you photograph a model, like they're really prominent, and so you know if you're building something for an online comp or a photo-based comp, taking that extra hour of work to really clean that model up and do that well is worth it, because that just instantly shows up that it's just a model, you know. And so if you just put the time and effort into cleaning that stuff up, doing a good job of it, it really helps the finished product.
Here's an example where you can see some of that, like here on these parts, just to be clear. So, yes. All right.
Yeah. While he's switching photos to the next guy, I'll just quickly say, if you guys aren't familiar with at least where I've come from, the whole reason I ended up being a professional scale modeler was because of photography and trying to replicate on the web forms what I was seeing on my workbench and trying to convey that to my fellow friends and stuff on all the web forms. And it was that push of photography to get better at sharing my pictures that pushed me into how I ended up here. So it's way more important than we probably actually talk about. And there's some good photos and there's some bad photos in a lot of this. And a lot of guys you can see where they take this seriously and you're learning. So we're happy to help kind of, you know, because online photo contests, like Aaron said, it is a different thing than standing in front of the piece for real. So yeah, it's just kind of it's a good overall to remember for future shows or future contests.
Exactly. And while we're on the note of photos, before I let you guys talk about this one, I was just mention something else about this was true for a lot of the entries as well too, that had very dark photos like this one, for example. So again, for sharing your photos online or whatever, the dramatic look looks great in this really dark lighting. But for us, for judging, take a second set of photos that just for the judging you're going to send in to us. Makes our job a lot easier. And then take your dramatic photos for your Facebook or Instagram or whatever, wherever you want to share them. So again, something you'll see with a lot of the entries, just something to keep in mind. But Mike, you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Does Andrew's? Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
Andrew.
So, and this is one of those to me that when I mentioned the earlier piece where you're looking for a little something that catches you, and this one is because of the drama, because of the power of the pose, the physicality of the Zaku warrior with the heavy battle weapons and stuff like that. This one jumps out at you right away in terms of being a really strongly weathered piece. The problem here, Andrew, for you, that we didn't feel the weathering warranted the story of what you're trying to do. Because again, you're going to hear this a lot, guys. Every area of this thing is just beat up, and it's trying to come up with the basics of how did it get to this point in time. And this is really where studying to me, Andrew, for your piece here in particular, because I think you're on the cusp of it. I really do. You're knocking on the door of kicking this wide open for yourself. It's going to be more translation of what's happening in the real world and looking at real machines and what happens to real machines, and then putting this over on the Gundams. Because here you're gone really intensive with a lot of stuff. I question whether the rusty battle axe would be that rusty overall if he never touches and never uses it, or he's swinging the long sword around and the edges aren't even more polished. So you have a ton of stuff to work on because you're trying to do so much. And for me and Andrew's piece, it reads immediately, quickly, great, grabs you, cool, and then you dive into it and you're like, oh man, this is rough, because it's really intense. And that's the believability factor. It really fights you with this one. And I think we could probably rein you in a little. It's great to go further and then pull back a little bit, but if you rein this one in, this is probably a showstopper. So, because of the Zaku War, it has presence, it has mood, it has the basic arc of what this thing. It's a battle machine. It's what it is, clear and cut. But it's when you look at all the chipping through the shield and stuff like that of what's going on, and it's very even toned. All the chipping has the same visual weight across the model, and so not one area has a stronger emphasis, and you want to probably play with asymmetry a little more to get a little bit more of a natural vibe to this one. And that's really what I wanted this one to have when I got in close, and it's almost too much, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Aaron.
Yeah, so agree with Mike's take on it. What I will say is it's really evident that there's technique there. Like, that you can see obvious technique in this painting, and some really good kind of use of rust against worn metal. It's not just all the same type of weathering as well, but yeah, a little bit overdone. And another thing that we've not mentioned yet, which we're going to probably keep talking about, is scale, right? So scale is a huge thing with weathering. And if you think about weathering, like when you're weathering, you're accepting that you're bringing that model into the real world, as opposed to like a really clean, stylized build where it doesn't. That's sort of not the same thing. Like, well, you're going for that finesse, that perfection of clean. But with weathering, you're bringing it into the real world by doing that, and so you have to respect scale. And if you look at, if you think about the size of these models in the real world versus the size and the kind of, amount of weathering on these things, it's just, it would be enormous, right? Like you think of the size of that axe that we can see now with that rust on it, that would be a huge thing in the real world. So again, it's kind of been rusted, like the technique's all there. The scale's a bit off and maybe just a bit overdone, but yeah, you can rein that stuff in on this model. Again, huge impact. Obviously got some skills there, so you really could bring this to life and really kind of apply that, and it would be a showstopper. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Andrew Mech Painter is you're knocking on the door, my friend. Like, you're right there, and it's just this is intended to really push you through the plateau that this is at, and maybe it's actually holding you back a little bit because you are embracing everything, which is great to see. It's awesome, but I think there's you continue, and you will cross the next plane into where this thing looks like it's really a true 1/100th version of the real thing, kind of an idea. So yeah, and we liked it. It just falls apart, I think, a little bit on that. Sorry.
No, definitely. Yeah, it was one of our finalists that we talked about a lot. One thing that I really like about it too is I think in general, just some of the modifications that he's made to it, and as well just the colors and everything that he uses, all really nice ahead of the weathering. So that was all. It's a really good looking Zaku. I think I liked it a lot. Yeah. All right. We have another Andrew up here next. Let me get this open up here with his Jagan here. Give me a second. Here we go. All right. This was one of the ones where it was much more lightly weathered compared to a lot of the other ones. So, Aaron, you want to start off on this one?
Yeah. So, nothing wrong with being lightly weathered, right?
I'm lightly weathered, by the way.
Yeah.
Sure. We're all getting
that's another thing. People hear weathered and they just go, right, weathered must be, it's been in the scrapyard for 20 years, type weathered. And one thing I always say about Gunpla and Gundam and this kind of universe is that, apart from maybe the grunt suits, which they're just pumping out, but if you think about these things, in a lot of ways, they'd be worth billions of dollars. They'd be looked after, right? they wouldn't be that insanely weathered in the real world. Now, that doesn't mean you can't take some artistic license on them and, you know, go a little bit more. But, yeah, like, I mean, even this, we're classifying it as lightly weathered, but, you know, in reality, it's probably closer to what the truth would be of these things in the real world. Yeah, I mean, again, maybe some extra contrast in the colors would probably help make it pop a little bit more, just to sort of like bring out some of that detail. But yeah, and again, you know, you've gone to the effort of putting a white background in there. I would have cropped that so that when the judges are looking at it, we only see a white background and not, you know, the paper and the desk and all that stuff, because it's all distracting, that sort of stuff, you know. And it does add to the impact of it when you're judging it. But yeah, I kind of like this level of weathering. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. But yeah, I mean, there's some really good stuff there, and you can see some technique developing. And just keep going, man. Whoever this is, just keep pushing, keep following, copying all the people you like out there, and you build it up. Mike?
Yeah, I would say that's probably my impression was the skill set's probably a little bit lower than some of the other ones, or this is a younger, more beginner type model builder, and I think you're exploring where weathering is going for you, and I like that. It is restrained, which is good. I appreciate what Aaron was saying with that. There's, you know, if anything's executed well, then it doesn't matter to the level of intensity you're going for. If the execution's there and the scale is there, then we're usually going to like it. So you can go light weathering, heavy weathering, and that can compete against each other, no problem. If it's executed to a high level and the story's there and all that kind of stuff. And this one here, to me, is I just want to see more. I want to see more story to the life of this Gundam. You know, there's some chips and scratches and some small. It's almost anime weathering, if you kind of want to debate that a little bit, where it's kind of like on-screen weathering, where it's not really like dirty or anything, and it's been beat up a little bit, but that's kind of the extent of the display for it. So, but for me, I think it would just be the chips. If this is going to be the main point of this one, is to just keep pushing yourself to refine them even further, and keep pushing into the next level. And this is where a modeler can do 10 more of these, and you'll start to see a lot of improvements over time. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good example of where it does look, probably it's maybe second or third, maybe a model like that.
Possibly, yeah.
But yeah, the level of restraint is very good. You know, because like Aaron was saying, less is more, and that's a little bit harder to do sometimes. So I think they're doing this little bit of weathering, even less on the next one.
Too, you know, for all of the kind of young modelers out there that are in the comp that are listening, like you're pretty lucky in the sense that these days you can get inspiration from anywhere. There's just an inexhaustible supply of inspiration out there. You know, when I was sort of 15, 16, you know, you'd get your hand on some magazine or something like that, and they'd only have 5 models in it, but that's all I had. You know, like these days you've got so many points of reference. So, you know, absorb it all in, keep building, keep trying stuff, and you know, eventually you'll kind of get to that level.
Yeah, that's true. There's so much, and even just real world examples you can find all over the place, right? All right, this one is by, sorry for getting here, Ben. Okay, yes, Ben.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, it's my turn.
Yeah,
sure, go for it.
This one, to me, I actually, Ben, if you're listening, I actually passed by this one fairly quickly. The first pass through of all the contest pieces in the weather side, and I think it was Zach's comments that brought this one. He really kind of made us look at this one a little bit more, and I started to really appreciate some of the things that you were able to achieve with this one upon a second closer look, which is. It's good. That's why you have multiple judges, because sometimes sometimes some of us are looking at something else, and then over here there's this over here. This is one of those for me where I was like, when I was pulled into it, I liked it a lot more the more I looked at it. In particular, the covering on the hand, the orange, the faded paint on this one, and the conversation on this one we'll see closer towards some of the ones that were higher up the finishing order. The original painting is nicely done. The colors are really nice. The harmony of the colors are really nice. The faded tones are really nice. Probably the photos hurt this one a little bit, I think, for me. You know, the dirty, dusty paper background, it's kind of distracting. Like you want it to be a little bit more clean and presentable because you're in competition. I think that's kind of what the point is on photography, is you're going to compete, bring your best game to, you know, to the forefront. So probably a little bit, you know, more effort for the background to be a little bit cleaner. And the photos are a little bit fuzzy overall, so probably work on just focus and work with that, because I think this piece had some nice stuff in the weathering going on where Ben, you're going to go, again, like a lot of guys, if you keep doing this, you will start to see huge improvements moving forward. There's some nice painting in here in terms of the tones, the faded oranges with the nice teal green for this guy. So,
yeah.
I mean, I agree. I initially kind of went through this quick and went, yeah, you know, and it wasn't until we had that discussion and we actually spent a long time talking about this one, and it made me kind of look at it differently again. But some of the big call outs for me is on this image that we can see now, the scorching around where I guess the fingers go into the, you know, to the arm. That scorching there is beautifully done. It's like, it's really to scale. The discoloration on the kind of paintwork is really on point. Very realistic look there. So, you know, I can see some strong technique by this modeler. And the faded sort of panels is done really well. We kind of talked about the fading in the paintwork quite a bit when we spoke. So fading is important because in the real world, when things are weathered, there's always, you know, paint fade and things like that. The one thing I would say, there's a few images there where there's kind of some really strong panel lining, maybe not this image in particular, but there's some sort of strong panel lining and stuff yet. Yeah, you could probably, that one doesn't look too bad. Maybe it's the light, but, you know, with panel lines as pronounced as those, you know, I really like to see those kind of really brought out, and it really kind of can, it's, you know, it's like when you put a black line around something, around color and things like that, it really helps it to pop. So, you know, with such prominent panel lining, I would have kind of really used that and accentuated that, put some weathering around that, and kind of really use that as a contrast point. Just adds visual interest to things. But yeah, all in all, some really good techniques. But yeah, the photography, you know, work on that a bit too, because it's a photo-based comp. And we appreciated some little things in this, like this shot here. We could see that there's been some work done under that sort of shoulder. There's maybe some scratch building added in there. Right. So we did check up and notice that. So that's always good. That always is, you know, we'd like to see that as a judge, that they've kind of gone to the effort of doing things like that.
Yeah, for me too. Like you guys said, this was one that could be a little bit of Hygog bias because I particularly like this model, but
Origins rule.
Yeah, well, this one, I liked it a lot. Like you were mentioning, though, Aaron, about the panel lining, the panel lines, the new ones described here, especially on the shoulder panels, and on the head, it's kind of okay, but they're a bit distracting on the shoulder panels. Some of these lines, just because they don't really seem to fit the shape very well. It's kind of have this big organic shape that's kind of broken up by these very straight lines. So that was a bit distracting. And yeah, so I think, like you're saying, that could have been improved by a little bit more weathering around them or something to kind of accentuate them in a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Again, the real world, use the real world for reference. Like if you look at any tank or military machine with panels, the panels are never the same color each side of a panel break, right? Like even if it's the light that's playing that trick, you know, and you've got to use that in your models because that's how your eye connects with it, and then your brain goes, oh yeah, and it's real, and we see it, and that's when you get transported into it being a real thing.
Brad here is next with the Stormbringer. Yes, Stormbringer FA here.
Yeah. Me first this time? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, the first thing that jumped when I first looked at this model, a couple things kind of jumped out at me is that the photography is not quite sharp. So what I would say is, I'm not sure if you've taken these with a phone camera or whatever, but when you're getting in so close to try and show some of that detail, you're going to maybe lose some of that clarity. So what I would suggest is that taking a more wider shot and cropping it and zooming in, that way you'll get a bit of a better image quality. And also too, there's maybe a little overexposed, a little too much light in there, which is kind of washing out some of your colors and some of the contrast between the colors. And again, same old, it's kind of a bit evenly weathered over the whole model. I like the color choice. I like the kind of camo-y effect on the main armor. But yeah, it sort of looks like the same tone of wash has been applied over the whole model, which has kind of given everything the same tonal balance, which is then it's a bit hard to kind of see the definition between parts of or areas of the model. So, those of you guys that are using that technique of paint, bury it in a wash, and then, hey presto, I've got a weathered model. That's it's really not going to get you very far, because you lose all that tonal variation, you lose that contrast by doing that. So be more selective.
Yeah. A couple of things, Mike, before you go ahead. I'll just one thing that I want to mention is that the metallic blues and reds I found really distracting, and that's because they're so bright and just completely different from the rest of the model. So using those, it almost looks like he did the weathering on the entire model and then put those parts in last, kind of this. So it almost sort of look like kind of jewels, which doesn't really fit the weathered look. Also, the masking of the camo, you can see the edges of all the masking very strongly. So yeah, like Aaron was saying, I think the colors they chose and the idea of doing that camo like you did, I think was a good idea. But that's something that just comes from the paint was applied a bit too thick, and you could then also sand that back a little bit gently after painting. But that was also quite distracting me, aside from the flash, which is saying the lighting of it is making that very apparent. So you can see that really clearly.
Yeah, this is probably the if you're looking for a reason not to take flash photos, this is a good example of what happens to your model when you take flash photos. It's really hard for it's hard for us to really judge this one fairly. I think there's some technical issues with the painting, with the masking. So Brad, if you're listening, this is going to be a learning exercise on airbrushing and masking camo in general. When you take mask and you have a hard edge where it creates that border between the paint, you're always going to struggle with that. So that's going to be a thickness of the paint applied as you're trying to learn and do your brush work. I don't know if this was brush painted with tape on it, like as a mask. It could be a brush painted model versus
if
an airbrush
I had to
model.
guess, I would say it's a spray can would be my guess.
Okay, yeah, and that's going to go down really thick, Brad. So you're going to fight that one. So if you're at that point of trying to decide to airbrush, do it, brother, because it's going to be the next step for you. You understand weathering. There's some stuff around the foot and the chipping and some of the things is a positive. You get it. I think at this point in time for you, it's really just bite the bullet, get the equipment and the tools that's going to really elevate your work to the next level, and then just push forward for again, a dozen of these later, you're going to look back at this and go, what was I doing? So there's just some technical flaws in this one that probably distract. And you tried to weather the whole thing. And I think a lot of guys make that mistake with science fiction projects in general, because again, and this isn't anything a negative per se. It's just, and Aaron and I will say this a lot. I know Zach does too. No, it's just, you got to really start to pull in what happens with humans and machines into what happens on a Gundam if you're going to take it into the realm of realism and weathering and stuff like that. So, that's probably, I think we probably hit this one pretty good, but I don't want to discourage you, Brad, but this is going to be one of those learning experiences for you to really take it to the next step for you.
Totally. I was just having a laugh because it was reminding me of, what's the movie? Forgetting Sarah Marshall. You guys seen that movie? Where he's getting the surfing lesson. He's like, do less. Do less.
Do less.
Now you're not doing anything at all, but do less. We have to do more than that. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing where you're kind of, it's a good place to start off, where you're kind of doing almost nothing. and then you can just kind of work your way up from there.
Yeah, maybe one more comment before we move on. This would be true of everyone.
Sure.
Is if you're new to weathering, like and we can certainly see there's some sort of new to weathering people in the comp. That's awesome. But don't try and do everything at once. Welcome. But don't try all of the techniques that you've seen online or in books on the one model at once, right? Because it will just look like that, Work on a technique at a time, get comfortable with it, understand it, then move on to something else, and then start to combine techniques and build up your repertoire. Just because you know how to do salt chipping, hairspray chipping, all these other different things doesn't mean you have to use them on every model.
Yeah.
Totally. All right, should we move on?
Yes. This one, what were we talking about this in the chat or something? Mike, were you unaware that this was a scene from the anime? I think we mentioned something about this in the chat.
Yeah, this is it 08 MS on this one? Yeah. No, I actually remember the scene because this is where what's her name saves them, right? Basically, like this is where they get to know each other.
Yeah.
And then I forget their names of the pilots. I'm terrible with all that, but I actually do remember this.
I know, yeah.
But I think on this one, mad props to even trying to pull a scene off in 3 months. Good job on that. That was kind of where you can see somebody's got a little ambition with trying to be a storyteller, which is cool. For me, this one, I think outside of we'll get to the snow effects, but probably the battle damaged chipped areas, trying to and this is a conversation of trying to replicate anime on screen weathering versus real life weathering. And there's always that little bit of what do you do and how do you play? What's your decision as an author of the piece to do that? So I think probably the chips here, they're just large black, blocks of color on the white. And probably, again, it's one of those, just pull it back in, and then try to really go for it. But I think the snow is, I think you could probably crop the base down and really tighten this whole scene up because you just want to see the machine on a little bit of the snow and you've got a lot of empty base there. But other than that, I mean, the props for really going for it, I think is really what I liked about this piece more than anything. I think technically probably going to be there, but I appreciated a modeler who's going to, just commit. And I like that about this piece a lot.
Yep. Aaron?
Yeah. Again, it was good to see somebody attempting, some snow and things like that. And then obviously, recreating a scene is always good too if you can do it well. I mean, again, what I found, I can understand that the base was there to kind of bring the scene to life, but I found the base a little distracting because the base is quite large. The model only occupies a small part of it. So yeah, Mike's exactly right. Like if you're going to build a base, it's your base. You can build it however big you like, but zoom in on it, crop it out of the photo so that the focus.
This is a composition comment, I think. Composition of the piece. Yeah.
And again, that's just another thing to learn, in the whole scheme of things. The artistry of modeling is to get that balance right, But no, good attempt. I mean, some of the weathering on it is maybe needs, a bit more practice. Keep doing it. You'll kind of get a better hand at it. It can be quite daunting if you're, brushing in, chipping and things like that. You see all these videos online where people have such control and such accuracy, and it doesn't come immediately. It takes a lot of practice. So keep practicing, it will come.
Yeah.
But all in all, no, it was good. Good little model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Personally, one of my favorite scenes in the anime. So, I mean, I really like that. It's a really cool scene. I remember seeing that like on TV for the first time where they use the beam saber to melt the ice to make
a shelter, right?
Keep them warm. Yeah. It was pretty amazing. It was so cool to see that. After going from watching Gundam Wing, where it's like everything's exploding, to seeing like, it's a real machine kind of. All right. Bro Builder is here. And I don't know if Bro Builder is here in the chat. I don't think so, but we can talk about his here. Oftentimes he is, but I think it's quite late, in America at the moment. So
it's after midnight East Coast, so he's probably sleeping already.
Although there's some pretty hard to identify names in the chat, so he could be here.
Well. Anyway, Mike, you want to talk about this one first?
Yeah, I'd love to actually. And Brian, I hope if you're not here live, please watch later, because I think this is going to be an interesting conversation. This was a big talking point piece for us. And this goes towards the human element of judging, the fact that we knew you and we know what this is, and that kind of, it doesn't alter anything, but it does. We do put emphasis on trying to apologize for the sirens. Apparently they're coming to pick me up. But yeah, I live in Portland. We have a lot of sirens right now. This piece in particular, given the fact that the author, Bro Builder, was trying to take a known element, a kid in 1/100 scale, and push it into an entirely different realm of like a 6 scale, size scale object. There's a challenge there, and there's a risk reward. So if you're doing contests and you're doing this kind of stuff, this is a great conversation, because technically everything's fine. I think the skill sets are on point. But when you do that, when you take a risk reward situation and you're going to run the risk of it not being pulled off, I personally think, Brian, you probably didn't have enough time to really envision, pull off your whole vision for this. I personally also like the fact that the photos, I think it actually looks better without the brick wall with it, believe it or not. And I said that to the other two guys. I feel when this piece is pulled away from the brick wall, the strength of the modeling, the skills, the technique, it's a painting and weathering contest first. I put more weight onto that when that happened. When it goes up against the brick wall, in the other photos, while the wall is nicely done, you're starting to fight, in my opinion, some of the color choices here, the strength of the red brick versus the really dark, moody greens and grays tones. And for me, if you're going to go down this road of this being kind of a humanoid size figure, maybe 10 feet tall or 9 feet tall, kind of an idea, I actually kind of almost wanted it to look like a SWAT guy versus a Gundam painted, repurposed Shinanju Stein into this form. I think you could have totally committed to another paint scheme idea to reinforce a police unit, a drone unit, something that's more soldier military size kind of an idea in that scale. And that to me was where you're fighting so many kind of cool ideas in the time and everything else. And I think this one bit you a little bit in that regard. And because I think technically it's really well done, especially compared to a lot of the less experienced pieces. You can see the chips and scratches. Everything's really nicely done. It's just that to me, because that's what your goal was, we probably weighted you pretty heavily on that, to be honest with you, because it should have been a higher up piece in the judging. And I think it gets kicked down a little bit because it struggles with this whole idea of repurposed scale. I know Aaron's got some good comments on that too.
Yeah. So again, it was a challenge because we all obviously, all know each other, and and the technique on this is quite evident. We're very, very high technique in terms of the weathering and whatnot on it. And in this instance, to scale, if you think about, it's meant to be a kind of 1/6 scale maybe. So I would say that it is kind of weathered to scale. So, good effort there. The thing that kind of threw me though is a couple things. It's such an iconic suit. So the Shinanju Stein is like, a crowd favorite. It's really easily identifiable. So if you're trying to break that kind of scale and break that, that fourth wall almost, where you're bringing it into a different scale, maybe not such a prominent suit that we immediately just all looked at and went, oh yeah, okay, this is kind of a different scale. The other thing too is the brick wall in it is such a strong element. It overpowers the model to a degree. It's very well done. The brick wall itself, just looking at the brick wall, is extremely well made, weathered, painted, everything. So, I thought that was awesome. But it's a very strong element. It's almost equivalent in terms of what it occupies in the model to the model itself. So I found it just like that brickwork is outstanding. Some of the best I've seen, to be honest. So I just found it a touch distracting because I found myself getting all gooey over the brickwork when I should have been looking at the model. But that being said, very strong technique, and obviously because we know each other, we expected good technique. But I agree. I thought the ones without the brick wall in it brought it back into scale for me, and I liked it. But with the wall, I can definitely see what you were doing, where you were going with it, but yeah, just what you said then, Mike, about it would have been cool to bring this into like a SWAT type universe, humanoid type sized robot drone in that world. That might have been cool, like something out of Chappie or something like that.
Yeah, I think your comment earlier, Aaron, about how being such an iconic Gundam and then trying to totally change that conversation. If you're going to do that, I think the strength of going into, say it's in like just a Pat Labor type SWAT type scheme probably would have been more effective to really drive. Like if you're going to bite the scale and go, okay, screw it, guys, I'm going 6 scale my 100. Like everybody kiss my ass, I'm going for it. Then do it, bro. Just bro builder, like do it. Don't hold back on your theme or your vision for that. And that's why we're kind of so hesitant in our comments, because we love what it is, but we know it isn't kind of coming off what it should be. I think and we're going to weigh you on that, knowing that. So understand risk. That's a competition risk reward comment, guys. Who want to compete? If you want to compete, you got to think about that. So it's an important upper level competition thing.
I want to ask you guys this too. If you imagine this not standing, but like floating as if it were in space, and instead of the brick wall, just like a piece of like colony space debris or something that it's hiding behind, I can imagine, this loving this so much more.
Yeah,
with that, with
this goes with the 1/100 mobile suit, just a custom paint. It's not, just a custom paint. It's not Stein floating in space. Probably would have been in the top 2 for sure. I think technique wise, you're on that. It's in the top 3 for sure of this entire show. So it's kind of one of those where it's kind of why we're saying these comments, because it's a great commentary on competition, how to compete properly. Risk reward's a big deal if you're really going to bite something and really push a theme home for somebody. Really come at us then. You know what I mean? Just do it. Don't be afraid. We're not going to fear that. We're going to love it. It's the opposite of the snow piece before, where it's just a commitment, but it's just the skill wasn't there to really pull it off to make it, win the show. So it's kind of one of those for me. Yeah.
I'll just say something else too that kind of was an issue for me too, is the color placement seems a bit all over the place. There doesn't really seem to be a good kind of flow of the colors, because you got kind of the same amount of each color on each piece. So that was a bit distracting, just color-wise.
Yeah. But I love the open knee and the pose and a lot of the stuff going on. There's so much good on this one. It's hard because we want it to be more successful, I think, than probably what it probably ultimately was. But I say too to a lot of guys out there listening, don't hold the piece. Like if this piece is just kind of there for 3 months, come back to it, do some more. Don't be afraid to come back to a piece and continue on with the previous finished model. You think it's finished, because it may not be to you, and you might be able to just, do a lot more with it, given the fact that time constraints is off the table. So that's another point too. Keep going, push it.
This one is Calvin's, where a lot of these photos were kind of very blurry. So we'll basically just kind of stick to this one photo, but you just give some simple thoughts on Calvin's here.
Yep. Okay, so maybe some general pointers in terms of when you're photographing a model, like ever, and in particular for a competition. Keep the background as plain as possible. So photographing it with such a busy background as the box art, it doesn't add anything to your model. So it actually is very distracting. I would just stick something white behind it, and that would have been easier for us in terms of being able to judge it. Can see some, probably very new to weathering, maybe first or second attempt at sort of weathering. And awesome, don't want to discourage anyone, like we've all had to start from somewhere. So you can definitely see room for growth there. But yeah, the big thing that sort of jumps out at me is the photography here is putting the box in the background adds nothing to this. So maybe don't avoid doing that in the future.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I would say this is like the Jagan earlier piece, where the modeler's probably, I guess, Calvin, I'm guessing you're probably pretty young, my friend, and you're getting going with this, which is awesome. So don't be discouraged by Aaron's critical thinking. It's just being a jerk. Don't worry about it. I love it. Truth be told, though, on this one, same thing, same kind of basic comment. It's subtle, awesome. No worries with that. the staining, the kind of shadow effects you're doing with the streaks. Just keep trying, keep pushing. Work and scale. It's going to be. I believe this is early days for you. I'm guessing you're just getting going with all of this stuff. So honestly, dude, great job. The photo comments are good for everybody to hear that. If it's a photo contest, definitely bring your best for this. And next time you'll do better with that, and no problem. And it'll show the piece a little better for us. But there's a lot of good stuff with your streaks and your stains. You're understanding grease and grime, and I like that part of it more than the chipping part of it, which is good to see, because machines leak and they bleed oil and all sorts of fun stuff. So just keep going, man. Push.
Yeah, I would say the kind of general idea of what to do for weathering is there. So it just needs practice to kind of get the feel of how to do it more successfully in the future. A couple of the general things too, I would just say, like, you can see some nub marks around here and there. So, just doing some more work ahead of time, prep, make sure everything's sanded and well prepped. Also using stickers, I would recommend, getting away from using those as soon as possible. Using waterside decals or dry transfers if you prefer. Anything's going to be a better bet, especially if you're going to be doing weathering, because stickers are going to stick out real fast if you're doing any weathering on a kit. So just some basic things to also kind of try to tackle at the same time, I think would be good for the future.
Sorry, my dog's barking in the back.
Quite all right. All right, Carlo is up next here. And here we go. It's actually also another Stormbringer FA, but with some kind of Barbatos, or it's not the Barbatos. It must be the.
It's got some IBO flavor to it, yeah.
The feet are the rebake.
No.
Rebake full city, the 1/100 scale rebake kit, I think. Anyway, and some kind of custom shield and rifle on it as well too here. But yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, this goes to what I liked about this one in particular, besides kind of the pose and the imposing pose, if you will. Yes. It's static, and so it's easy for us to kind of get a feel for it this is the common of photos. It's in one pose, everything's kind of there, so we can rotate ourselves around this piece to get a good feel for it. And I would say this piece in particular falls in this very similar, with a large group. Like if there's a bell curve of weathering in the competition, there's a meat curve of this where you guys kind of all do this sort of same thing, where everything's kind of chipped and scratched and worn and weathered in kind of a very generalized intent to just show that it's been beat up a little bit. And that's all well and good. I think for here, same concept applies across the board of just getting more of a life and a story into the heart of what you're trying to achieve visually, just not a beat up machine, because it has to get from A to B to get there, and how does it do it, and all that kind of stuff. So you can tell that with the chipping and the dirt and the grime and grease, and that's how you kind of convey to the viewer more representation, because I think the pose is there, the customization and the color choices are nicely done. They're similar to the OG kit, but at the same time you tweaked them, but the reds and oranges are toned down with a little pop of the green on the chest and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. It's one of those where I just wish this is going to be where the modeler in a year or two is going to really step up and kind of understand where this would be an experience piece in terms of gathering, skills, I guess you could say, for weathering.
Yep. Aaron.
Yeah. So I really like the look of this kit in terms of, I think the proportions are nice. It's kind of, the photography's good. I really like the color choices, like the little orange accents really add to the model. They're not just there because you wanted to put some color separation. Like there's some thought gone to that. And the lighter, I guess it's a white or maybe the gray parts of the legs and everywhere else. I like the kind of scorching and the fading and the different sort of tonal variation across those areas. So I think it's quite nicely painted. Mm-hmm. And again, the weathering, it's sort of the same all over. So we've talked about that a lot. Mm-hmm. One thing I'll say though about the one bit of feedback, if you're going to modify a kit or add other parts from other kits. So obviously those feet are Barbatos feet, are they not? I think.
I think rebake.
Yeah.
Or yes, cushion rebake.
just be careful, like in terms of when you do stuff like that. Like if it happens to fit out of the box and you just stick it on there, like, you know, it won't kind of translate. If you can see things like you can see the peg where it's sticking on, like, and there's one shot on the side, like that one there.
Yeah.
Like if we think about this giant war machine that's built with one purpose of killing other machines, that ankle just jumps out at me as like an insanely weak point, right? So if you're going to go to the effort of, you know, kit bashing, make sure you think about that as well, right? Just because it fits in the hole doesn't mean it should go there. I would probably have put some more armor around that, scratch built something to encase that ankle so that it actually then marries it into the model. But, you know, full credit, at least you're kind of doing that, kit bashing, that's all good. But yeah, I really like the paint on this, but yeah, the weathering, maybe just a little bit even all over again.
Kind of generic, I guess.
The paint was what I was going to mention as well too. It's very like deep colors there. It looks really nice. And yeah, the feet jumped out at me right away when I'm looking at this, like one of the first pictures here, and I thought it does look very cool. So I thought it was a good choice. It actually fits with the model pretty well from the front there. But then when you see it from the side, and you can see just how big that gap is there, you're definitely adding something in there. Building up something of a frame more or adding more armor on there, it would have been nice just for that small little modification. But I think it was a cool idea. It just needs something more else around there, I think.
This plays for the risk reward conversation of competition work. If you're going to compete and modify and customize to battle other modelers, it's the same basic principle. If you're going to do that, you have to take into consideration what's the positive and negative, what you're trying to do. And that's what they're all getting to on this is they're trying to hammer home that if you're going to modify and customize and kit bash, then you've got to build it all the way through, all the way out. You've got to get to that point. I'd rather you do that and cut the weathering down a little bit more and then put more emphasis into the structure so that it's believable, so we don't get distracted by the fact that that's just a peg and a post and a hole in a model kit, you know, sort of. It's risk reward's huge for contest stuff, big time.
I just see Ryan Lau on the chat just posted their great pose, and it's true, that pose was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the imposing pose.
If you're trying to catch the eye of judges, that pose will do it every time. You know, that immediately makes you stop and take notice.
Definitely. Here is yes, Carney.
Okay.
Hey, Aaron, Mike, I'm gonna step away for just a second. I'll let you guys talk about this. So go ahead before it.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm going to probably guess another one of our young modelers. So awesome to see, you know, somebody get in there and really get their hands dirty and trying all this stuff out. And huge effort. You can see the effort that's gone into this whole piece. I guess the you know, in terms of the effect of weathering, maybe a bit out of scale, like a bit overdone in parts. But again, a full respect, I can see that, you know, they're really trying sort of some techniques here, and you know, and with the areas that are brush painted, they're always going to be a dead giveaway that something's not, you know, real, but that's okay. One little bit of feedback about the panel lining on the white. So, you know, having that jet black panel lining on the white can be sometimes a little harsh. So maybe use a kind of different color to panel line the white so that it's not so prominent, because it sort of goes away from being a panel line and just becomes like an outline around the panel. So again, it sort of throws you from the realism, but you can definitely see the effort that's been put into this. So well done to whoever made this. But yeah, maybe just a little bit over the top with the weathering, and you'll learn to tone it down as you keep going, but keep at it.
Yeah. No, my comments mirror the same thought process for Aaron here, is that we feel is probably a younger modeler for sure. Definitely passionate, and that's, you cannot outweigh what passion brings to the table. So Carney, definitely continue on. Don't think anything negative here at all. This is early days, my friend. And this, to a lot of modelers out there, if you're going to pursue this, these are one of those, you stick this in the closet and then 10 years later, pull this back out and then look at where you've advanced to. There's a lot of good here. The colors, what you're trying to do, the hand, you're restricted because you don't have an airbrush, but you're not afraid of that. So that's a positive. That means you're confident with what you're doing. This is just going to be like, I guess, every other thing in life. It's going to be, you just need more experience with it. Whether it's you're athletic in some form, if it's soccer or tennis or basketball, whatever, honestly, it's just early days, my friend. And just keep going, because I think you're right on the path of letting your passion take it through, because you're really into it, you love it. And that was the thing I took away from this. I don't want to, be anywhere negative to where, your skills, you're young and you're going, and that's, just go for it, dude. Don't even sweat it, and just keep going, and that's really where you want to push this. So yeah, it's a fun piece, and the pose is strong and good. And, everything that is a strength. So like, you understand this, that's good. It just, it's 10 years from now, I think you're going to be winning these things for sure.
And I don't know if you guys mentioned this, I'm sorry, and I wasn't cycling through the photos obviously while I was not here, but I think it's nicely presented in the photos as well too. It's got some good photos. We can get a good sense of the kit, some close-ups and some further away ones. So
yeah, and like, let's also give a mention to the other work that you've done here. Like, I think there's a bit of a resin pour on the water there. Maybe there's some smoke work, there's lava, there's muzzle blast coming out of the gun. So I mean, lots of things here that you can see some good skills developing, and keep at it, like Mike said. And
smart to stick with high grade in that conversation, not going master grade for 3-month projects. So sticking small, it was smart, clever. Yeah, definitely cool. Yeah, I'm on board.
All right. Next one here was from who? Chester, of a Psycho Zaku. Here we are. A green Psycho Zaku, which of the many Zakus, I don't know if I've ever seen a Psycho Zaku quite in this color. So that's certainly unique. Mike, you go for it.
Yeah, so this, I guess you could say, this is we keep bringing up photography. This is a contrast to going. This is what a nicely presented piece is. Helpful, clean background. The stuff that we wanted to see in focus was in focus. There's overall shots, and then there's close-ups. So this is a good representation of solid contest, imagery and those kinds of things. I had a hard time I think this one is a brush painted or hand painted piece. I believe this kind of comes off as kind of more of a hand brush painted model. Fine, totally cool. I don't have any problems with that whatsoever, because it's got a very and I take that into consideration, that this is a stylized element to it. It's so the realism element goes away a little bit because you're more stylized now. So I do give you weight for that, because I like what you did with the bazooka. It's very stylized piece, and it's got a lot of metallics and stuff to it, versus the polished shiny green armor areas, and then you've got kind of the more matte olive green thruster pack and stuff on the back. So there's a really good effort here to really do this in a stylized way. And what I mean by that is if you're going to come in with a signature style, then it's totally cool to execute it to your highest ability. And that's what I'm going to judge you on as a judge if I'm looking at this piece, because it is different to the other stuff that's airbrushed in a more hyper real format. So judges we have to balance that somewhat. So I like the fact that there's a commitment here towards your stylized signature. It's really, I think the colors are a little garish, personally. My personal opinion is probably you could have maybe come those down a little bit and maybe a little bit more harmony. But overall, I do appreciate kind of just, it almost looks to me, if I saw this in like a store passing through a window, and this maybe was a model that was made 50 years ago. And I don't mean that in a negative, it's got a very almost antique vibe to it, if I had a way to describe this. The copper tubing, the brass tubing. It's not steampunk. It just looks like it was made in 1950 by hand. And I think that's a unique way to present something like this. And maybe you don't have the tools, airbrush, whatever. So I don't take that as a negative. I like a lot what's going on here, to be truthful. Like, the bazooka is awesome. Look at that thing. It's like kind of blue, yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it's got a little bit of a kind of sci-fi fantasy kind of look, almost like something out of Warhammer or something. Kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Aaron?
So the armor kind of reminded me of cast like iron, like pig iron type armor. Which, hey, look, if that's what you were going for, you really nailed it. It looks exactly like it. So well done. But look, I'm not going to repeat what Mike said, but what I wanted to do is that there's a shot of the shield, the other side of the shield, Zach, I think number 8.
Yep. Well, here,
yeah, that one will do. So we've given kind of pretty much the same feedback about, everything's weathered the same amount and it's like too harsh over all the models. But this shield is a good example of where good technique can allow you to really push the weathering, right? Like if you look at this shield and then you think about some of the feedback we've given to other models here where it's too even, it's too much over the, this shield is weathered to hell compared to a lot of the other stuff, right? But it's done very well. And it actually is totally believable. It really plays well. It's well done. There's good balance there. It's for me, I kept coming back and looking at that shield and going, this shield's done very well. And maybe just the sheer size of this model and the amount of work it would have taken to have that same level across all of it would have been a challenge. But can see some really good skill there. Like that's very well done. And maybe just think about taking what you did there across the rest of the model and tying it all in, as opposed to having that one part of it that stands out as well done and the rest of it, is probably a bit overdone in parts. But yeah, you can definitely see some skill there because I really like that shield. It's beautifully weathered.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Let me pull up Chris's here. Camphor. Here we are. There you go. Let's see. Aaron, you're up.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, it is.
Right.
So the first thing that I'll kind of remark here is the photos are good in the sense that we've got a good plain background. There's some nice, zoomed in shots and some wide shots so that we can kind of get a sense for the model, but we can get in and have a good look. So that's always very helpful. Maybe like with the dark blue, be conscious of that because it's quite hard to kind of see contrast between the rest of the model. So with such a dark color like that, you are going to lose, particularly when it comes to weathering, what you can do in terms of weathering. So, maybe a lighter shade of blue might have given you a little bit more room to work with in terms of the weathering, because realistically with such a dark blue, you've really only got, that kind of aluminium or that steel chipping that's showing through. And then it's like super contrasty and it really stands out. And it's kind of easy to see that it's been painted on and things like that. So color choice is a very important thing. Now in the real world, everything weathers. The color, it doesn't matter. But when it's your model and this is all fiction, you get to be conscious of the colors you choose. So perhaps a bit of feedback is I would have maybe gone a lighter color because it just helps with the weathering, make it a bit more believable. But yeah, good photos so we could really get in and get a good look. And there's some good stuff too around, like some of that piping there that you can see. That's really nice. It plays well to scale.
Sure.
Mike?
Yeah. So I'll let Aaron's comments kind of just be the overall for this one, and I'll take a little bit different tact in my comments on this one because they're all, I agree 100% what he just said, and it's very true across the board. And so I think for this modeler here, probably this is push more your technique skills in terms of replicating the weathering effects, the chipping, the silver chipping and stuff like that is probably in this case, switch to a sponge or something, or more refined brush. And I think here, this is one of those where I think everything's great. Everything's where it should be. Now it's just focus on your technique, hit the corner kick into the net on this one. This is kind of where now you need to practice and really develop your hand. If you're going to brush paint chips on the edge of something, really develop that out now. Keep pushing that if that's what you'd like to do, or switch techniques to something that's going to give you a little bit more refined result, because when you paint to a higher level and then the weathering it'll bring it down because the chips are not quite what they probably could have been. And that'll be a good way for you to really push to the next step in terms of, because what Aaron's saying and everything, the color choice, all this, that's going to come with time and experience too. But there's some just specific techniques here. Is just like, if I'm going to be that guy, okay, this is weathering. Okay, boom. You got to really work on your chipping with your brush and then really refine that. And I think that'll help a lot moving forward, because that big scratch there on the lower edge of that upper of the chest piece there is probably 10 times too large than you need it to be. And it's just more of a technique to just really kiss that edge to get just a kiss of a highlight, because we don't need to see something as a viewer that big of a chip really to convey that it's worn and battle hardened. So that's kind of use those improved techniques to get the model to a higher level, because we'll see the same thing. We'll see a camphor ready to fight, and that's nothing what anybody wants to be facing. So I think if you just improve your skill sets, I think you'll really achieve the next level. Sure.
Yep. Yeah, same. Just one thing about the photos that Aaron was saying too. They are, in general, pretty nice, but I just wish that we could see, because the model is so dark, that the exposure was maybe a little bit higher, so we could see a little bit more, because it's kind of hard to see the model in some of these because it's quite dark. All right, next one we have Barbatos. Barbatos here by Christian. Joker themed. One of the few, I think, themed ones that we really had on the weathered side. But Mike, before I.
Yeah, let's see here. So again, this one probably goes kind of towards the customized Stormbringer we saw a little bit ago. A good, strong pose. Barbatos, obviously, he's a beast. We all know it. We all love it in that regard. And that's the strength of this piece, is kind of it's ready to go. Obviously he's primed and ready to fight as a war machine, and that's good. And the color choices are probably more subjective here. It's not my favorite color choices for a custom paint job on this, and I think realistically, if you're going to go with something like this, then it's all well and good. Probably the harmony of the colors versus the actual purple and greens of Joker, just kind of more of a balanced harmony would have helped here a little bit. And again, my same comments to the previous on the camphor. Right now, it's really going to practice your technique. Execute your chips, your scratches, your battle damage to a higher level, more refinement. Bring them more into scale. Because I think you're on the right path, and I like the fact that this probably shows the combination of a comic book fan, a Gundam fan, an anime fan. The passion's there. Now I think you're knocking on the door of the next few pieces. Will probably, because the ha on the shield, it's nicely painted, and it looks like they're probably stenciled, which is cool. I like that. They're not. I don't think they're all decals. I'm guessing some of these are stencils, maybe, where you airbrush them on or whatever. Because I'm seeing kind of the red through the green, pulling through the red of the which is all cool. For me, it's just really, this is a case of just basic refinement of your technique and skills to improve, to push it higher up the food chain here, more than anything else for me.
Yeah, again, agree. I mean, the color. I mean, I like that you've gone for a theme. It's pretty. It can be cool if executed the right way. Having a theme to your model and bringing the model out of its normal universe and doing something cool with it and clever. But the thing is, too, once you do that, you're really committing to it. You've got no wriggle room then, like if you're going to say it's a Joker, then it has to be all the Joker. And then, for me, I started looking at other elements like, some of the other decals that you had on it, which for me don't kind of fit in that theme of the Joker. But, good effort for trying. I think that was appreciated. Again, maybe do some work with color theory. There's so much information out there on basic color theory, and like a good example is that shoulder plate there, that dark green and dark blue. Like in terms of color theory, not really a good combination to put together. It's like putting kind of red and green together. It's quite hard to get it right. So I think maybe a slightly better color choice would have helped with this model. I do like some of the damage and they're like that one there on the shoulder there. You can see that there's been some damage cut into it, but there's also been some work to put maybe some metal mesh behind it or something to give it the illusion. It's not just a chunk out of the plastic. So, again, good techniques there. So you can see a lot of really good sort of base techniques. But just keep practicing, keep improving, and do some color theory. Watch some YouTube stuff on color theory. It'll help.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand, like you were saying, about wanting to stick with the color theme. I mean, because it's Joker, so you got the green, purple, and white. But yeah, you can just make some slight adjustments to the colors. They don't need to be like straight green and straight purple and straight white. You can adjust it a little bit accordingly. I think the colors would have meshed a lot nicer together, making the white kind of a sort of off-white and making the purple a little bit more pale or something, not quite so bright. Could have looked nice. Yeah, I also liked the damage, and especially the mesh on the shoulder. That was a nice little touch. Things like that were nice about that one. Next we've got Clifford's Devil Gundam, a very unique one here. Here's that.
Go G Gundam.
Yes, I'm a fan right away.
Over the judges. He's trying to win over the head judge.
He knew I was a fan. But yeah, Mike, go for it.
I really actually I love this piece for what it is. One, because I'm a huge Devil Gundam fan. I love what this author what Clifford's really pushed forward. The greens, the tones, the whites, the off-white with the pale kind of goldy yellow orange, and taking an iconic visual piece and turning it into something different. This is an effective use of risk reward to me. Really think there's a lot of success happening here. The only thing that let this piece down a little bit, I think, was just kind of the execution of the techniques, a little bit probably the weathering in and of itself, the specific techniques. This is a piece, if it's done all the way through to a higher level technique-wise, probably would have been in the final conversation for sure. But I had to kind of let my personal enjoyment of this piece go, because it's painting and weathering is the primary focus here. So the strength of that is the overall color tone. In contrast to Joker, here's a successful version of a repainted, customized piece to where the colors are different. This works really well for me. The greens down low, the muted greens in the middle, and kind of the base, all these stuff really works for me. And for me, it's ultimately was just the techniques just kind of don't kiss it home. And this is really, I think if you pursue this is the kind of stuff here. When I'm looking at a competition, this piece would make me stop and come back and look at you. And I did 2 or 3 times, because there's special stuff happening, story. There's what's going on here. It's obvious, but at the same time, it draws me in, and that's okay as a standalone item. But it is a weathering contest first and foremost. And for me, just a little bit of the techniques, the mud down low is a little distracting. It could be better done or more in scale for this beast. This thing looks like a beast coming out of the ground, kind of an idea. So I expect dirt down low to be a little bit better executed to create the scale effect of this. Is this 1,000 meters? Is it 10 feet tall? Like, what is really happening here? And that's kind of those weathering elements will come in time, I think, more than any. But I actually really love this one as far as just a personal piece for me. I just think it's really awesome. So it was a duality of judging and liking it, and then the technically just wasn't quite where I'd hoped it would be.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, agree with that as well. When I first looked at this, I kept coming back to it because it sort of had a bit of a Matrix Sentinel feel to me, with all of that stuff hanging there. But then I couldn't work out whether that was hanging from it or if that was actually holding it up, all that pipe coming out of that. And, you could maybe have helped with us understanding that by the way that it was weathered, because it's kind of only mildly weathered at the bottom. So then I sort of thought, well, it must just be coming into the ground, so it's holding it up, sort of thing, not dragging behind it. But look, I like the greens. I like the paintwork on all of that piping. You could maybe have put, maybe if you had picked out the eyes on the big kind of face there in the middle, it might have helped that sort of pop out. But yeah, and again, the one thing that I kind of noticed about this one is that everything's muted down with the same kind of wash, the same tone. You can kind of see that at one point there would have been quite a lot of color contrast between the oranges and the greens, but then it sort of looks to me like it's been just quite a heavy brownish wash over everything, and it's muted everything to the same kind of tone. So again, you know, avoid doing that, because it just sort of does away with all your hard work of those contrasting colors. But yeah, cool. I mean, cool piece. I'd like to see this in real life, actually.
Yeah, same. Aaron, I will say that interestingly about, I think we were talking about this while we were doing the judging, not on this particular piece, but a different one. And we were talking about how like that wash wouldn't be the same over the entire thing, because the whole mobile suit didn't like jump into a big puddle or something, right? Whereas this one, I like realistically thinking about it, did actually come up out of the ground. So it would all be completely covered in dirt like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, realistically, yes, would be kind of like that. But just as we're looking at it, it is a little bit, the aesthetic is a little bit lost with just kind of having this wash over the full thing.
The story is strong in this one, though. If I'm comparatively going across contestants here, story and this one was a strength to it. There's stuff happening here that I want to know what's going on, and I like that about this piece above just the standard posed Gundam kind of a thing. So there's props for that, Clifford. I think this, to me, come back and you work on this for another month or so. Don't let the time frame worry. Just keep going on this one. Push yourself, and you can keep adding stuff to the earth and push it and do some deeper contrast on what Aaron's talking about, and then bring forth more depth to this piece. And visually, as we get closer, we'll see more about what's going on. And this is a model I think you could actually work on for a little bit longer and keep going.
I do just want to also make sure to mention about just the customization, the scratch building on this is really nicely done as well too.
So I like this piece a lot. I really do. I think it's a great shot, a great piece. Good job, Clifford.
Yeah. The base model that he based this off is, you know, it's a super simple like 90s model. There's like nothing there, but he's done a lot to build it up to make it look much more full. So it does look very nice as far as the
I agree about the desire for an MG of this in the comment skids. I do agree that, yes, please. That April Fool's was cruel, Zach. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But had to throw out something.
I know you did.
All right. Here is the gun cannon by Cullen. Origins gun cannon.
All you, Aaron.
Yeah. Aaron, me? Oh, okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so this again was one of those pieces, for whatever reason, we spent a lot of time talking about. And that's because we kind of, I think it's a classic where you take one look at it, you think you've got it all summed up and you might move on. But when we started picking apart some of it, we were like, oh, yeah. And then, so it kind of got us to think and talk more about it. And look, if you can get judges talking about your work, that's the ultimate end game, right? That means they're looking at it longer. So I really like the photography, although I think maybe your sort of lighting effect from above is a little bit distracting. It's just kind of overexposing those top surfaces. But, you know, it's been nicely photographed. You can kind of see it's got a good background, so that helps. Really subtle on the weathering. So here's an example, I think, at the other end of the spectrum where it's not just weathered the same all overall. It's very subtle. Like Mike and I think we both commented, like, is this meant to be in the weathered one, or is this part of the clean?
At first, yeah.
So, but when you zoom in, it is indeed weathered. It's probably the closest one to being weathered to scale that we sort of came across. So good job there. The one comment for me is, you know, if you're going to put like that sort of aqua teal sort of blue that you've put in there, it wasn't quite enough contrast against the green. So they're both sort of a pastel-y type of colors. So it didn't sort of separate, you know, out those other parts of the model for me. So I think you could, with all that green that's there, I think you could easily have got away with a bit of a bolder color there in separation. The decal crossing that panel there, and you can still see the decal in the middle. That's super distracting and really easy to fix. You could have just run a blade down there and cut that part of the decal out, and that would have really added. I actually love it when decals cross a panel line and you see the sort of gap in the middle there, because if you look at military stuff where they paint over a panel, it's just kind of missing there, and it really adds to it. So yeah, I think that I found that a bit distracting. I kept sort of bringing my eye to that. I just wanted to sort of scratch it out, so that it wasn't there. But yeah, I like it, and where you've got some of the rust there, I sort of questioned its placement, but I think we all agreed that we liked the effect. Maybe just the placement of some of that rust would kind of be where water would normally pool, as opposed to just right smack dab in the middle of a panel that's essentially smooth and round there. Like, there was opportunity all over those panels to where rust would naturally want to form, but the technique of the rust, I think, is done quite well.
I agree. Yeah, I think the like you were saying about the lighting being a bit harsh from above. The other thing just about the photos that I'm not sure if it's just the quality, but they seem a little bit out of focus as well too. So again, like we mentioned earlier, just make sure that the right part of the model is in focus when you're doing your photos, and something to check as well, double check before sending your photos. Check your photos, make sure that, so when you're looking at it on the small screen, you think, yeah, it looks right, and you send it, you may notice, actually not the right part was in focus for that. So yeah, but I like that one quite a bit too. That's a nice colors on that too.
Yeah, this is one of those that we discussed. It moved up the food chain as we kept discussing it. Like, we kept coming back, like the high guard, we kept going back to it. And this is actually really nicely done. It's probably the best of the more subtle weathered ones that we came across in this contest. So it actually got quite a bit of conversation later in the judgment of what was going on. Color harmony is good, and all that kind of stuff. Really, you keep coming back to it and say, oh yeah, that's actually really good. And we like that. I think the photo comments the photos probably really play well on Instagram and social media and stuff, but as for judging, the shield's blown out. It's hard to see kind of the what's actually happening with the weathering a little bit. So there's some minor stuff that I think, Colin, if you just, for the future and stuff to take away from this one is that I put you in that group of guys in this contest in particular, that the next 2 or 3 with a little bit of guidance, and you're going to be really, really good, my friend. So just keep pushing this yourself on this. A lot of great techniques going on here. Real subtle stuff, hard to do. And the decal is a problem. Yeah, you got to cut that through, my friend.
You might as well put down Mike on this one.
I was Aaron. If you hadn't said that, I was just about to say that about cutting that decal too. Anyway,
just wanted to get it.
Here's the Jesta here from Dafunda with quite interesting painting on this one, which I think is a little bit different look from what we've seen on almost all of them. But who's first? Who wants to go first?
Me? Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, so this could be kind of in that conversation of it's stylized. The painting is a stylized process to create a visual look, whether kind of illustration look. Probably a little bit of commentary on the photos. The same stuff we're kind of saying is I think better photos would have probably elevated this even higher, just because it would have really brought forward what we're trying to do. I was appreciative of the painting skills at play here. There's color choices here that are, again, this is one of those you kind of come back. I mentally, I just don't think it's there, but I think we're really close to elevating into the next realm of stuff. As far as being weathered, truthfully to be told, it's almost just kind of a stylized clean build. If I'm kind of blunt with this one, weathered isn't really happening here on this one, and I feel it probably pulled it down a little bit comparatively speaking to some of those that put more emphasis into the actual weathering. So the stylized painting helps. It's cool. You're on the way. This one kind of to me felt almost half finished in terms of actual what weathering was for what we're looking for. So I liked it, but at the same time, it just there wasn't much to go on with this one past the painting of it and the color choices, which are good. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, this was one, I think, one of the few where they, I mean, I know what you mean. It's not weathered in the traditional sense, but I did like whether they've done it with a sponge or something, but there's just a slightly different shade of the color kind of blotched over a lot of the panels, and it sort of gives that, almost water damage and sort of staining kind of effect, discoloration on the panel. So, generally people jump straight to chipping and staining and all those different things, but discoloration is actually the first stage of most weathering, right? So I can see effort being put into that in here, so that was good. But yeah, like this one just seemed a little sponge happy, so I'm guessing a sponge was used, and it just seems like it's been dabbed over the whole model. So again, it's very, very important to think about layout of your weathering, and it's got to look random but not be done random, if you know what I mean, right? Like, it's a hard thing, an easy thing to say, but hard thing to do.
It is. It's the challenge.
It only comes from years of practice, and and getting critical feedback like we are now is an awesome way to grow, because in life generally people can't be bothered giving you feedback that's actually useful. Like, they'll just say, yeah, it's good, and then move on, because it takes effort to give someone critical feedback. So take on board everything that's been said here. It's a good chance to kind of grow and really take a leap forward.
I just want to say that it also just kind of really reminds me kind of Max Watanabe's style, where it's basically weathered through just the painting. The way that it's painted makes it look weathered. Kind of like what Mike's saying, how it almost doesn't necessarily look like it's meant to be weathered. It's just painted in this way that kind of looks dirty. Reminds me of that. I mean, it's cool stylistically how, let me see a good example of photo here, but looks like kind of like on the light blue, it's sponged with the dark blue, and on the dark blue, it's sponged with the light blue.
Something like that, yeah.
But yeah, anyway, and I actually really like
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I really like the little bits of color, the little bits of orange, and the little kind of like copper metallic bits are a nice little
color choice
accent
nice,
as well too.
Yeah, I think just as being a painted and weathering contest, I think it just falls short in that category, but it's a nice piece. So I'd like where the modeler is going with this, and his style and performance, and the police are back, but they didn't find me the first time. I don't know how loud that really is to you guys. It's screaming in my ears, but yeah. I live. If you don't know, guys, I live in the heart of Portland. I am in the dead 6th floor of downtown Portland, Oregon, USA. So it's a busy city out there, even on the 10 o'clock p.m. my time. So apologize.
Oops, sorry, that's not the right thing.
Somebody's in trouble. That's all I'm telling you right now.
It's all going on out there.
Oh yeah, all night.
All right, David's Barbatos here. Another one where we've got it sort of set in the scene a little bit. Mike, go for it.
Okay. Let's see here. Just pull up the photo. Okay, yeah. So this probably falls into the same categories as a younger modeler. I want to say probably just kind of getting going with representing a painted piece in a skill level where, this is probably brush painted or aerosol, spray can kind of a thing, and then come back in with some weathering on top. I would like to say this is probably early days for you, and you're attempting to learn this stuff as you go, and then compete to get better. So really, it's just, I think, just an overall sense of just maybe kind of half of the. What I like to tell guys at this point, if you can do half of the chips that you put on the model the next time, you'll probably see a more improved result. So this is one of those where I think there's youth at play, experiences at play, and then trying to really pull off a whole scene out of the IBO series, which is iconic, with the little worker machines and stuff like that, which is really cool. So I appreciate Like the one piece we saw earlier from the younger model is the passions here. So this is just keep going, keep pushing. And you'll learn more as you keep going, because this is very early days for you, my friend. So yeah, just and I like that you try to put it in a booth to get better photos for us and stuff like that. So I do appreciate the effort here for sure.
Yeah, effort, 100%. Yeah. And look, I mean, I'm guessing probably, in your young teens or whatever, like I wasn't pumping out stuff like this then, So, good on you for having the courage to kind of build a base and do some smoke effects and add some other things in there, huge creativity. And, you'll be surprised at how quickly you improve if you just keep going at it and keep putting that. But yeah, in terms of feedback on this, the chipping, it definitely your technique needs a little bit of work, but again, all the foundations there, you just need to keep working at it and refining it. And, what I would say is that some of that chipping, you could use a reference. So get yourself some good images of, a chipped tank or chipped machinery, and try to copy that. Some of that chipping, maybe you're just kind of doing it from what you think it should look like. So perhaps, work on finding some good reference material and trying to copy what that would look like. And then you'll find your technique will be a lot more believable and it will be a lot more real. But look, yeah, great effort. Appreciate all the photo booth and all that other bits and pieces too.
Yeah, I think just kind of interesting composition and pose as well. The pose needs to be tweaked a little bit, but it's different from what we see a lot of. So I like that. Next, you got another David R. With the Astray No Name, I believe. Here we are.
I don't know my Astrays, so you're not quizzing me on this one.
And I know, Aaron, you've got to go pretty soon, so we probably don't have a whole lot of time left. So we certainly won't get through all of them today.
I can stay a bit longer, actually, Zach, so that's fine.
Okay, just let me know then.
Maybe another half an hour or so, then I'll probably have to go.
Yeah, it's your call back because I noticed we're still in the D's. A lot to go.
Yeah, I know.
We had to split this stream up for the future. We're totally your call, buddy. Let you do that one.
Cool. Yeah, we'll see. We'll get through a few more. Yeah, obviously there's still a lot that we won't be able to get through today.
We're trying to be really thorough with you guys because I know there was requests for feedback, and so this is unusual. You don't to the guys out there that don't compete or haven't, you don't get feedback at a show. And so the earlier YouTuber guy that made comments months back about that, it's a fair comment. It's a lot of work to do this to give depth feedback for a whole show because Zach's going to do this for 250 models for 4 judges and with Adam, and it's like I'm like we're in the D's and it's like 2 hours, and I'm like I don't mind, I love it. We talk models all day, and I know Aaron and I really hit it off in terms of sidebar. We're fine, we're cool. If you guys are coming and going, I'm not sure. I'm not paying attention to the chat too much, but we're trying to give everybody their skill sets involved, and there's others, that we're trying to be fair across the board. Because we know there's kids here. We know there's going to be guys that are younger than the guys that have been doing this for 10, 20 years. And so I'm just trying to do what we can to help everybody out a little bit to just go better for the next one. Because I think David R. is probably going to be in the same comment as David we just talked about. Probably, I would say Aaron's going to take it. Go away.
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much everything we just said about the previous model, we could apply to this one. Very similar, I would imagine, age and again, same attempt has been made here and some good kind of techniques that you can see this young guy's playing with. And so, yeah, it's all good. But one thing I will say just specifically about this is maybe there's a little bit too much going on with the kind of greenery effect, the grass and greenery type effect. It to the point where there's like, I'm kind of questioning, are they roots? Are they kind of wires, like what's hanging over it? But can definitely see what you were heading for. And again, it's about restraint, right? So a bit here and there in the right places will always play off a lot better than it just being everywhere, but good attempt. And yeah, look, just a note on the whole critique thing. Yeah, this is an awesome thing to do, and I'm more than happy to do another stream to get through the other models, because you don't often get this type of feedback. And so for the most part, when you get to a level where you are comfortable competing, you just don't know. Like you put your heart and soul into a model, it doesn't win, you walk away and have no idea why. So it's awesome to be able to get sort of some feedback to understand where you can improve. Because if you're only getting feedback from your immediate circle, it's also very hard to improve then,
I don't know any of you guys. I can be as free and as harsh as I want.
Yeah, I mean, either that or you share it on Facebook and you'll get a couple of likes, and a couple of people will say, "Oh, that's really cool, I liked it," or a couple of people will say, "Oh, that looks like garbage," and it's nothing really all that helpful,
No.
Yeah. So
you want to know the why.
And props to you, Zach, for embracing that. Not saying no, we're not going to do that. So I mean, this is a tip of the hat to you, my friend, because you are helping the community out a lot. I know a lot of guys are probably going to watch this later and come back through and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. That's
for
the
sure.
goal. Yeah. One other thing too that I will just say about this one before we move on is just that also, again, I would just make sure that you are kind of taking your time to go through the basic steps at first, cleaning up the nubs and sanding, painting, even before you get to the weathering, before you get to adding the greenery effects and all that stuff. Because if you don't have those things squared away from the start, you'll end up where you can still see like some mold lines and some nub marks here and there and stuff on it. So kind of no matter how good your weathering is, if you still don't have those things to start off with taken care of, then it's always going to be points off for that stuff. So
I like the pose of this one, to be honest. I think there's something here. There's the early elements of a strong story of a defeated machine, and kind of maybe there's that final on his knees, before he was defeated. There's that classic defeat of the hero, if you will, so to speak, in this piece here. Yeah. So I do think David R. that you're actually going down the road of trying to be a diorama builder and storyteller. So definitely the strength of this one, I'm guessing there's a lot of age. You're young. This is your first time or two to do it. There's some good heart here with the wires and the exposure of stuff. And I like that I can clearly tell immediately. There's no confusion. This dude was beat, and that's kind of what happened. So, I'm fine with all of that. I'd like that. I think the next time you'll do even more so. Yeah. Did we lose Aaron there for a second?
I think we. There he is.
No, sorry. My dog was scratching at the door, so I had to get up and let her in.
Nice. All right. Demarcation Media here up next. This one also is, I think, what was this one called? It was a more recent HG in Justice Night, I think, something like that.
Okay, I would have never known.
Yes. Yeah. Cool colors on this one, I'll say, as we start off. But it looks like Aaron maybe is gone again for the moment. So, Mike, go ahead.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. So this one is a classic critique of what I consider Gundam weathering in terms of somebody taking a sponge to a bipedal machine and just scratching it up everywhere without rhyme or reason. Again, this strong critique in terms of start looking at the real world, start really, even if it's a little bit, just kind of bringing in more of why are there scratches all over every single edge and corner. Was it wrestling with another machine in a quarry and there's rocks everywhere and it's getting scratched up? Like you need to defend yourself a little bit in terms of being the model builder and starting. Weathering isn't just chipping things, guys. Just everybody get that in your head now. Take the sponge and put it aside sometimes and start understanding that you're showing the life of a machine here. And so as a critique for demarcation is embrace that. You've got the skills, you got good color choices. The teal is a relatively pleasing color. In terms of that, the poses are good. Photography is probably maybe not contest level, but I think you know what you're doing. And really just move forward in a serious effort to say, hey, my next weathered piece, I want to really make an attempt to be believable with that, because I think the scratches and the sponges, what you're using, you're probably finding your technique like you understand it, but I think it's just now moving you towards, let's get to a little bit more realistic level of what the heck is this and why is this looking this particular way. So that's what these kind of is for. And then it could be an age thing. Z, you might be a little bit on the younger side too, I'm guessing. So, embrace it, don't be afraid. Go look at old trucks and old trains and stuff, and then kind of pull that back to this.
Yeah, I agreed with all of that. One thing that jumped out at me about this is like the kind of paintwork looks a bit heavy in terms of particularly around the kind of head unit and the face. It looks like it's quite a lot of thick paint has gone on there. Which then obviously you lose a bit of detail, and if you're taking such close-up shots of it, it's sort of I don't know, it detracts from what I'm sort of looking at, and it really looks like to me the weathering sitting on top of the paint, like the shoulder there. You can kind of see in that view. You know, the paint itself is perfect underneath. It's quite obvious, and that scratching and stuff is just sort of sitting on top of the paintwork. Whereas in reality, those scratches would have damaged through to the, you know, down to the base and through the paintwork. So, you know, if you're putting such a decent paint job on these things, like just keep that in mind that, you know, if you're going to put scratches and stuff all over it, if they look like they're on top of it, you're going to destroy the illusion straight away. So,
this is something that we talked about for the judging on the clean side, because it's much more of a thing. But just with Bandai models in general, and especially with high grades, a lot of the edges aren't very sharp. So you have this kind of like where it's supposed to be a sharp edge, but it's very rounded actually. And so especially with a high grade where it's smaller, this again just kind of goes back to a point that I keep bringing up, is about doing your preparation ahead of sanding. Then you won't get these kind of soft edges where if your paint is a little bit thick, it's just making it even softer. So like Aaron's talking about the paint, if you got good sharp edges there, everything's all sanded ahead of time, then your paint will just be that much nicer on top of that.
Yeah, and you know, and then there's some like other things where there's, you know, the panel lining is maybe a bit translucent. You can kind of just immediately see it's a panel line wash as opposed to an actual panel line. And in particular, when you're doing a competition that's photography based, you know, you have to remember that your camera is kind of the last weapon in your finish for the model. So the camera can hide a lot, it can accentuate a lot, it can really like make or break the model. So, you know, where you've got those sort of dead giveaway areas of your model, don't bring them to the forefront of your photos. You know, like be conscious, have a look at your photos after it and go, actually, that's a dead giveaway there. I can kind of see a big seam line, or the panel wash is not really prominent there. So maybe retake that photo, orient your model a little bit differently and stuff like that, because, you know, judges only look at the photos they're given. They don't imagine what would be behind that photo and stuff, you know, on the other side of it. We just look at what we can see. So it's definitely a weapon in the arsenal for a photo-based comp.
Yeah. All right. Here we've got a Death Army from Dennis. Yes.
Who's up?
I'm first this time, yeah?
Yep,
Yeah,
sure.
Cool.
Okay, so, you know, another great attempt. It's kind of a different style. Like it's like when I looked at this one, you know, my initial thoughts was it's just kind of all one color. But then I sort of thought, well, actually, it's maybe a different material. That, you know, this one, it's kind of, it reminds me of like those big, heavy kind of iron machines, you know, that they don't kind of get chipping or weathering, but the paint almost gets rubbed back to metal, and the metal gets a sheen to it. And that's kind of what I sort of have seen like on the edges here. I feel like the paint has been kind of rubbed away through use, and it's sort of brought bright metal out from underneath it. So a different kind of a style maybe. So, you know, I try to look at it for that. I think with your background, maybe that background, like red and green are quite, you know, they're quite kind of harsh colors to the eyes when they're put together. So I would have maybe chosen a different color background to take photos of the model on, and try again. You've tried to get in close to get some areas of the model in focus, but then your focal length is such that it's blown out and blurred all other parts of your model. So if you're taking photos with a phone, take them further back, so more of the model's in focus, and then zoom in and crop that, and you'll get a better kind of close-up of the image that way. So just a bit of a pointer there. But, yeah, I mean, I sort of like the effect on this in areas, it's quite good. But, again, yeah, it's kind of all one color. You could maybe have picked out some other areas for just added interest, and improve the sort of photography a bit, and this would be looking pretty good,
Yeah. Like,
this is probably I'm guessing, again, probably a younger model, but I think it's a good commentary towards going conservative the other way, because the selection of the kit, the Death Army, it's a grunt. You take less opportunities with it because it doesn't present itself as easily as something a little bit more sophisticated like the Devil Gundam, or even, the Bro Builder with it. So this is kind of the opposite spectrum, kind of that, in my opinion. And I think the strengths in particular are the red areas, the knuckle and kind of that center waist panel thing, and then the weapon itself, the kind of combination. There is definitely something there in terms of the application technique is creating a stylized result. And we like that about this one. Zach will probably pull out get your seams and your basic setup and straight, work on the ABCs of the model building part of it to elevate the model on the next attempt. And obviously photography is probably a little bit of a weak point, but there's some cool stuff here. There's whatever you're kind of doing, my friend, I like it, and don't shy away from it. I think especially the knuckle pieces, to me, probably really, there's something really cool, because when you up close, maybe it's not quite as effective, but from a distance, it's got a unique little, I'm hopping the train here in a minute, guys. I'm sorry. Loud horns again. But, there's a big freight line outside, guys, and this is I think Southern Pacific Railroad through, or whatever comes through the Pacific Northwest from California north up the coast for some geography lessons. It's literally 4 blocks away from me, and he loves blowing his horn. He can't stop. So, but I love this Death Army and the fact that there's something, and I think for this modeler in particular, again, keep pushing what you're doing. There's a lot of good stuff happening here in terms of your visual appeal and stylized version of it's Aaron's comments are kind of, it looks like an Iron War machine versus kind of a Death Army, Gundam grunt suit that we know from Bandai. So I like where that's going. It's very conservative in its approach, but I think you got it. So
yeah. All right. How do we do? Maybe 2 more.
Sure.
Okay. Oops. Not that. Sorry. Hang on a minute.
Let's see.
Here we are.
We'll get through the D's. Is that what we're going to do? Get to the letter D?
We'll do Dougie, then Eduardo.
Okay.
Maybe here. We'll do that.
Okay. What do we do? Is this Dougie's?
Yeah. Dougie's Buster Gundam.
Okay. He's like, hey, what's up?
But with some other kind of stuff in there. It looks like, I think like those pistols are from the Dynamis, for example, I believe. So, but yeah.
Kit bash in the Sea World.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, nice color choice with the purple if you're going to go custom. There's the outdoor photo. Let's see, which one are you on? Yeah, these colors, there's some of these where the light kind of mess it, but when the ones that are kind of more of the gray cloud sky calm it down. Yeah, this is probably going to be along the same similar lines of I'm guessing a younger modeler who's maybe either run out of time a little bit, trying to pull off his idea of this customized Buster. But I will say positively on a strong note, I like the bulk of the purple on this suit in terms of it's like if we looked at the Joker Barbatos where the greens were kind of really patchy and that was distracting. This is the same concept of a committed custom paint, but I think it's a little bit more successful breakdown in terms of proportions of the whites versus the purple. That's nicely done with the contrast of the darker knees and some of those color-wise scheme. It definitely actually is working for me on this one. with just a hint of gold. So maybe he's an LA Laker fan. I don't really know, but that's kind of where I'm going with that. Sometimes there's kind of that sports theme in there. But yeah, I think this is just kind of the similar idea to a younger modeler just kind of starting off with this. So there's not a heavy commitment to the weathering on this, or the photos aren't helping us determine that. Probably it's going to be the critique of this, is the pictures aren't going to do you any favors here.
Yeah, Mike, if there's something that I could also throw in, I think you mentioned that it could be the case where you kind of ran out of time, but I think it could also be for a lot of these that they kind of maybe hit the end of their experience. Not so much they ran out of time, but they ran out of, that's kind of all that they really know how to do at the moment, where it's just kind of like they've tried something and then they kind of don't really know what else to do with it. And it's just a matter of not having that experience under their belt. I will say too, just about the photography, that good job for going outside and taking photographs outside. It's something that we often recommend. It's kind of the best way to get some good, easy lighting. Just the fact that I think he took these a little bit too late in the day. So, I don't think that, just trying to think back, I don't think this was one of the ones that came in at the wire. So I think maybe waiting until the next day to take the photos would have been a good idea. Because it looks like maybe it's a little bit dark.
This will be a good experience builder for this modeler for sure. Build on this one for sure. Yeah, take a lot away from this one.
Yeah, and I think there's some stuff going on here which is quite obvious that we've mentioned numerous times. Like if you're going to take a model outside, choose a less busy background. Because that's sort of somewhat distracting. And also too, this one's a classic one of like every photo is almost a different pose. So when you're judging this type of stuff, you actually want to see the same pose at different angles so that you can maybe verify what you were thinking and stuff like that. And if you see a new angle but it's a new pose, it can be very challenging to kind of make a fair, assumption or a fair kind of grading of that model, because it's different every time. So yeah, this one's a classic example of that.
Especially
find a good pose, stick to it.
What's that?
I said find a good pose that's strong, showcases the model, and then just take it from different angles. That's all you really need to do.
I was going to say, especially for the parameters of this particular contest as well too. If the contest was, just a cool custom mobile suit, something, right? Custom Gundam, then it could be a little bit different story. But where we're focused specifically on the finish, and you see that. And this one, like we mentioned too earlier, just kind of about the cropping of the photos, and like you mentioned, Aaron, just clicking that 2x zoom.
Yeah, that's right. Someone just asked a question about, can we recommend some books on theory on weathering? Well, I mean, you can't go much further than one of your judges right in front of you. Mike, books are probably the best that are out there. So definitely worth calling out Mike on that. But again,
just in the mail, Aaron. I sent you $100 for that comment. Thanks, mate.
All the young guys today, you are honestly living in the luckiest time, because you can go on YouTube, you can follow on Insta, you can go on Facebook, Twitter. There's, an abundance of books and content out there. Like, there's so much to learn from. But yeah, specifically if you want to know about books, look no further.
Yep,
appreciate that.
Exactly. And so with this one will be maybe our last one for today.
Okay.
And we'll give you guys some kind of general comments here after this, but let's go ahead and take a look at Eduardo's here.
This is it me or Aaron? Who's first? Sorry.
Go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
That doesn't matter. You go, Mike.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers. I was going to say, great that these two are a good way to end tonight's stream on the commentary, is that the previous model, the photos were a big talking point, and this model here in particular is, okay, this is kind of what we're talking about. There's some different poses in this one, but it's a good reference because we just talked about the last one, outdoor photos. This is the competitions, even the composition of the photos are good. He's moving it around a little bit sometimes, but it's the same general pose on the post with the knife. This helps us judge the model much better. Eduardo did a good job on this one. Again, this is probably in the Devil Gundam conversation for me in terms of I really think it could have been a contender with a little bit more, tweaking of the Jimmy Jam a little bit to kind of just get it something really, because he's the person, Edward in particular, he knows exactly what he's doing. I think he's got the skills and is in that medium range of going to the next level. Because I think the stylized version of the paint, the thematic kind of textural, I don't want to say carbon fiber, but there's the golden textural elements to the other. Props for that, man. Props. I don't know if it's a decal or what you did. I'm guessing it's some form of printing or something that you did to this.
I almost wonder if it's hydro dipped.
Yeah, I super think that's a cool thing. There's a lot of good of this one. I think for a painted and weather contest, it's probably going to be a little bit less. Like if you looked at this is a piece to me, and it's a great conversation between why did the winner win and why is this one not probably further up that conversation a little bit. And that is, there's a little bit less of a story here to me in terms of the finish. The finish is excellent. It's technically well presented. Photos are nice, composition. We can see everything. Now, dude, you got to put in a story. You got to give me something past the fact that he's a machine and getting it ready for a knife fight. Like, it's got to be more than that for me. So that's where you kind of tap out on this one. So I think technically the stylized kind of modeling of the white and gray and kind of the wood, how it's all super well done. I love it. It's just now I need something more with this one, and I wanted something more with this one. The Devil Gundam gives me the story, doesn't have this level of execution. If that's a comparative range of why, I think on this one for Eduardo.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do like the effect that kind of carbon maybe paneling that effect. That's pretty cool. It's been done quite well. One additional bit of feedback that was very distracting for me was the stand. So it's such a strong blue element in there. You got to remember that, like, your stand's not invisible, right? So if your stand's in the photo, it's in the photo in sense of it makes up part of the composition of the photo, right? So, you can have clear stands and those bits and pieces, but if you're going to go for a colored stand, be conscious of how that color maybe reacts with the rest of the model, because it can really throw it off sometimes. And for me, the blue in this, like, I try to take that blue element out of it, and then it becomes more of a gold, silver, and the green touch of a model. Whereas that blue element's putting a blue reflection on the legs. It's putting kind of a blue hue to the photo. So you can really play with your actual look that you're wanting to do. So just be conscious of that. And see what I mean? Like, that photo doesn't have that bluish element to it now. So yeah, it does change things, right? But yeah, I like this one. It's pretty cool. It's a cool model, but again, it's kind of evenly weathered all over. So a lot of the feedback applies to this one. But yeah, again, you can see some good technique there, and just keep at it, man. Like, you'll get better. You really will. You've got good base technique. It's pretty obvious. You just need to hone it and fine tune it, and you'll definitely get better.
Yeah, one thing I really liked about this one as well too is just the that bright green being on, like, the interior of a lot of these parts, like on the inside of the arms. You can see it's just a really nice, cool little accent, and you can see it in here as well too.
Yeah,
it's a really cool little splash of color there. I like that a lot.
Yeah, some of that doesn't normally get color. So it's,
right. Yeah.
Right.
So I totally appreciate the uniqueness of that. You guys are the experts, so I'll defer to you. But also in, like, the light color armor, it's especially noticeable, but the wash seems a little bit sloppy on there too. Just kind of like that need to be.
I was trying to figure out if that's kind of there's and it's kind of an illustrative style. Like, it's almost like if you looked at the box art of a white shoulder and kind of what a painting artist is doing for the illustrated style of that white. I kind of feel this. He was trying to put that into this a little bit. So I kind of, Paul, this is a stylized piece to me. It's kind of where I think I lean on this one versus is the technical wash kind of accurate to realism. Sort of, it's one of those weird. It's in that I'm not sure 100%. And I think we had some comments about when we start getting into the unsure category of something, we tend to knock it down a little bit because it's not clear enough for the judges to figure out what's actually going on. So that's an author issue. which I think is probably a comment for some other pieces coming up in the next session we have.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good segue. This piece is strong. It's just there's some elements that are holding it back a little bit.
Yeah, maybe we didn't talk much about story in this, and it's an important thing. Mike just brought it up, and we did actually spend quite a bit of time talking about that, and it is an important thing. If you're going off-piste with your work, and if you're just doing it out of the box, exactly how it's meant to look, the story's already there, right? You just have to do it faithfully. But if you're changing colors, if you're putting it in an environment that it's not normally in, if you're making it your own, which is we always love to see that, you have to be clear what you are trying to communicate, right? And you have to make sure that, like, okay, well, what's my idea? How do I execute that? And when you add elements to it, you have to kind of keep checking, does this add to my idea? Does it enforce my idea? And if not, don't do it. Because people fall into the trap of going, oh, I want to also add this, and this would be cool. I'll add some water effect here, and I'll do some smoke here, and I'll do this and that. And all you're really showing is some of the techniques that you're not really conveying the story. And that's a huge thing. Like when you're judging, if we have to try and work out what it is, or if any judge has to try and work out what's going on, it's just a distraction. Whereas if you can look at a piece and immediately connect with it and go, oh, wow, that's cool. I can see exactly what you're doing there. And it's been done really well and with some reserve. You're always going to be something that's memorable,
Totally. Yep. Yeah, that was something that we talked a lot about in a couple of pieces that, I guess we'll come across next time. We can talk about that some more when we get to those. But so yeah, by the sounds of it, you guys are both keen to do another session maybe later on. So we'll schedule that.
Part 2.
Yeah. And those of you guys watching, or if you're watching later anyway, just make sure you're following so you can stay alert for when that's going to be. I'll let you guys know once I set it up with Mike and Aaron. But and thank you guys both for today. I know that people in the chat watching live have been saying thank you, and I know people later will be commenting and everything. But just great commentary from some very
well, this will be cool because I think we haven't got to any of the top place models in this particular section yet. So I think this will be a great reference point for guys when you come back for the next session. I'll try to remember this that moving forward, especially for the top 2. I think we should put some extra commentary into like what Aaron just talked about. You're gonna see it clearly when the winners come up. It was so obvious, and that's the beauty of it. So to the guys that didn't get up to that far they wanted to be, we'll really try to say, okay, well, this is why, and this is kind of where you need to push, because this is why this dude did the whole thing. This is why he's the first one. And so that's an important takeaway from the critique, is to say, okay, this is where you're at. Well, okay, let's look at this dude. And okay, well, that's, when we get to 3PO, we'll have a really good talk about it, because I think it was so wonderful to see. And I think all 3 of us here really, really enjoyed the top couple pieces for sure. And then some percolate back up what we're talking about right now with these guys, with like Eduardo and stuff, because it's there. It's just, you need a little nudge, my friend.
It was interesting that afterwards, after we'd finished the judging, and I was telling the guys in my Discord that we finished the judging, I mentioned that it was actually kind of easy, and they were kind of surprised to hear that it was that easy. And I said, well, actually, after like an hour and a half discussion talking about like a group of them, after we'd talked in depth about all the ones that we thought were like kind of the top ones, then choosing like out of those the final 3, and then we made it like the final 2. That part was pretty easy after we kind of really had a good talk about them. But yeah, we'll get more into that in the next part, I suppose. So again, guys, thanks for hanging out. Everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out in the chat. And I'll let you know when the part 2 is going to be.
Okay.
Check these guys out on social media as well too. Guys, you want to let people know where to go for your guys' stuff as well too?
Yeah, I'm Weathered As everywhere on Insta, mainly Insta. I mean, I am on Facebook, but I tend to just slave post to, Facebook off Insta. So mainly Insta. I'm Weathered As there as well.
I'm at Rinaldi Studio. Same thing. My pages are quiet, but there's a lot on the pages. If you just want to just hang out and scroll through, there's a lot of older stuff in there. Just hundreds of photos of stuff to go through. But there is, for me, I know summertime 2021. There's a lot of stuff happening business-wise that it's gonna. I'll get back to it pretty hard, including a YouTube channel, which is I'm learning the ropes of video and what Zach does and everything. So I've got some equipment and some stuff I'm playing with, and I'm giving myself a pretty fine deadline. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be flipping the switch to do some kind of how-tos and some technique-based stuff and whatever for everybody too. So yeah, I'm excited. Good stuff coming.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. So I don't have the links in the description yet, just because I didn't put those in ahead of time, but those will be in there shortly. I'll add those in. Otherwise, you guys can find them around. So check them out. All right, guys. Till next time.
See you later. Till next time. Peace. Later.